This is the part of the Christmas story that we never tell. The part that we don't want to look at or acknowledge. The murder of innocent little babies. How did that make its way into our tender and sweet and serene Christmas story? How could one man's response to Jesus' birth be, okay, fine, not joy to the world, the Lord has come, but how could it be a murderous rage that targeted young boys in the vicinity of Bethlehem, putting them to death? It's unthinkable. And maybe that's some of what you're thinking right now. This is unthinkable. Why are we even talking about it here on Christmas Eve? Well, it's a part of the Scripture's record, and so we need to acknowledge it. But even more than that, there's something about this man Herod and his attitude toward the birth of Jesus that we need to understand. For 14 consecutive years, I had a child enrolled over at St. John's School, which is our ministry's school, for 14 consecutive years. So that means that over that time, I became a connoisseur of elementary school Christmas programs. Saw so many of them. And what I realized is that the plot of a lot of these are the same. There's a Scrooge kind of character or Grinch kind of character, someone who doesn't accept the meaning of Christmas and fights against it and is trying to put a damper on Christmas. And then there's a whole other community of people. Sometimes it's a school, sometimes it's a town. I've heard it's told where it was a department store, where it was a restaurant one time. But that whole community of people get to work on that one Scrooge, trying to help them understand the real meaning of Christmas, which they always do by the end. And it makes for a cute elementary Christmas program plot. But I take issue with that storyline because in real life, it's not like that at all. The proportions are all off. In real life, the reality is in real life, that all of us have at least a part of us that fights against the Christmas story. There's a part of us that doesn't get it, that doesn't want to receive it. There's a little bit of Herod in all of us. And so tonight, what I want you to do is, I just want to encourage you to take an honest inventory of all of the different feelings and emotions inside of you as it relates to Christmas. I'm sure there's some joy and there's some good feelings, but dig a little deeper and try to see if, okay, maybe there's not a murderous rage inside of you, unless you've been driving up and down Manchester this week. But as you inventory yourself, is there something in you that's fighting against this Christmas story, that is resisting it? Is there some part of your heart that's hardened against it? Is there some part of it that feels threatening to you? Is there some part of Christmas that you are trying desperately to control? You know, I think about what Christmas has become, and I love it, by the way. I love the way we celebrate Christmas. But I think about what it's become and what it was, and I wonder how we got here. And in part of my wonderings, I think maybe we've gotten here as an attempt to take this message, the parts of the message that we don't like, the threatening parts of the message, and to wrap them in lights and garland and tinsel, and to cover them over with shopping and presents. Maybe part of the way we celebrate Christmas is our attempt to control it, to fashion it into something that we find more palatable. And maybe you're sitting here right now thinking, I don't get it. What's not palatable about Christmas? What's threatening about the Christmas message? Well, here it is. I'm just gonna make this really clear. That if Jesus has come into the world not only to be the King of the Jews, but the King of everything, of the heavens and the earth, if Jesus is the Son of God in human flesh, born amongst us, then this is the most revolutionary, disruptive thing that has ever happened to us. And that means that everything must now change. The old order has passed away and a new order has come. Everything must change, including us. The way we think, the way we feel, the way we believe, the way we act. So it's really no wonder, is it, that Herod felt so threatened and fought against Christmas so hard? He had so much to lose. And it's no wonder that at least part of us fights against it too, because we also have so much to lose. At least that's what we fear. But tonight I want to encourage you to open up your heart to the possibility that the full message of Christmas, all that Jesus came to do, that it could be the best thing that ever happened to you. Well, that was, to use a word that I overuse entirely too much, and that, in fact, my entire generation overuses way too much. Nevertheless, that was awesome.
Everything is awesome. Everything is cool.
Yeah, this is my theme song, guys.
Everything is awesome when we live in our dream.
And yes, I did just do that to you. I took you out of the warm feels of O Holy Night, straight into the Lego movie. What's funny about that song, though, is everything is not awesome. But some of us think that it is by the way that we talk, because we'll call anything awesome. And again, that's part of my problem. That's one of the most overused words that I use, is the word awesome. I encourage you to do something, not now, but later on in the next couple of days when you're bored looking at your phone and you're not sure what to look at next. Go to your Messages app, whichever one you use the most, and do a search for the word awesome. And just see if you're like me. See how many times it comes up, and then look at how you use that word, in what situations. See if your uses aren't as inane as mine. Now, I actually did this week, and here's just a sampling. It's really scary how many times it came up. So I asked a friend, want to get together for a hike tomorrow morning? You name the time. 9:30, you name the place. Awesome. Also in so much pressure because I had to pick the place. Or, oh, do you like the food there? Okay. Yeah, it's pretty good. Awesome. Like, awesome to pretty good food. Hey, Joe, it's Dion. Is the City Foundry closed today? Google says so. No, sir. The City Foundry is very open. Awesome. Like, you're getting this, right? AJ, I didn't just conceal his identity since he works here. AJ Massick, wherever you are, I own you. No, I'm just kidding. He sent me a Bible passage, and AJ's one of our pastors, those of you who don't know. I don't actually own people. He sends me a Bible passage, and I say, I was in an elders meeting. You're right. That is an awesome verse for this series. Awesome verse. You're going to use it. And then this was Thanksgiving Day this year. You probably can't see behind this group of people is Ford Field in Detroit. And these are some friends of ours from Detroit, and they're in their Lions gear, and they say, we're all here. And I say, that's awesome. Enjoy. We'll be looking for you. Now, if you look at most of these, you're like, what about any of those things is awesome? Except for the Lions this season. Hey, we've been waiting a long time for this, so let me have my moment. Like, what's awesome about that? And maybe you're not understanding because you're like, well, I don't know. What? The word awesome literally means to be inspired with awe, or to inspire with awe. And when we're talking about awe, the bar is pretty high for awe. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. So when we say awesome, the bar should be pretty high. But here's something else you should probably know, that awesome is the etymological identical twin of another word that we often use. The word is awful. Awesome and awful for hundreds of years basically meant the same thing. The suffix some means to be characterized by awe. That's what awesome is, characterized by awe. Full, to be full of. Awe, to be characterized by awe, to be full of awe. These words meant the same thing for a really long time. They were interchangeable until just a couple hundred years ago. 200 years ago, this started to take a negative twist. About 60 years ago, this started to take this verbal filler twist that it has. But that's wild, isn't it? Because we would never use these words interchangeably now. right? If someone gives you concert tickets, that's awesome. If someone gives you bronchitis, which some of you have been passing that around this year, stay away, right? That's awful. And you would never get those things confused. You would never switch those terms up like people did throughout time and say one or the other. You would never call bronchitis awesome, and you would never call concert tickets awful, unless, of course, the tickets are to see Imagine Dragons. Geez, some fans here, didn't know. Right, we've made these words, completely separate meaning. So, and how did that happen? Why did these words become so different when they were once identical twins, meaning the same thing? And here's the point. There is an inherent ambiguity to awe. See, awe, this feeling, this experience of awe, it consists of the exhilaration of beauty and also terror. The exuberance of joy and dread all mixed together. And we don't know what to do with things that complicated, that complex anymore. We want to drive them one way or the other and say, this is a good awe, this is a bad awe. But awe is just awe. Tonight I want you to think about the last time you experienced an awe like that, like I'm describing, with both the beauty and the terror all mixed together. I'll try to help you along. Just a couple of nights ago, I was rolling the trash cans out to the road, and I looked up into the sky, and I saw just a gorgeous sky full of stars. And I was looking up at those stars, and it was really pretty. And then I had the realization, oh yeah, each of those stars is a sun, and each of those suns have a solar system around it. And man, there are hundreds of stars, and that means hundreds of solar systems. The universe is really big. And I felt that sense of beauty of, oh, the sky is beautiful, but also the sense of wonder of how big is our universe? Awe. Or I wonder how many of you we've had here in this area a couple of solar eclipses in the last, 10 or 15 years. How many of you have experienced an eclipse in the path of totality? Okay, a good number of you. If you haven't done the path of totality thing, the rest of it's just not worth it. You got to do the totality thing because there's that moment where you're there and the thing is passing over. You just saw it. It's the moon is passing over in front of the sun, and it gets dark, and the birds start acting all weird, and it gets kind of cool, and you start to understand why the ancients thought that eclipses might be the end of the world. Even though you know the science of it, the moon's just moving in front of the sun. It's an overwhelming experience. Or for me, when I think of a moment of awe in my life, I think of one of my favorite hiking trips ever. It was to Zion National Park in Utah. And I think of specifically hiking Angel's Landing. Anyone hike Angel's Landing before? Yeah, a few of you have. And then there's some who probably did who are no longer with us, because this is what the end of this hike looks like. You're on this really narrow ridge, and there's nothing but chains. And you're hiking, and it's just a sheer drop on either side. In fact, I think we have another perspective. Yeah. Like just hundreds of feet to the canyon floor. We're talking, this is like Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote kind of stuff. If you go over the edge, that's it. No one's hearing from you again. And of course, when I hiked it, it wasn't just like, oh, I'm out there in the great outdoors by myself. There are people everywhere. And I just knew that if one of those people goes down, the rest of us are like bowling pins. We're just like going over. And yet I say it's still one of my favorite hikes. And the whole time it was just spectacular. It's breathtaking. The vistas are just amazing. And Zion is a gorgeous place. But my legs were also shaking. They were trembling the whole time. I could not wait to get out to the point and get back safely to ground where I didn't have to hold onto a chain and where I didn't have to worry about falling off a ledge. Awe. Or I'll bring it even closer to this holiday. I wonder how many of you have witnessed the birth of a baby, of another human. Yeah, I heard some of you say it, right? Childbirth, man, it is terrifying. It is brutal. It is so scary. And I know there's some like first time pregnant people here, and I'm so sorry that I'm telling you this, but it's terrifying. It is brutal. I mean, look at this poor baby girl's head. It's still kind of cone shaped because like you watch the process and you wonder how a child can even survive that, let alone a mother. But in that moment, when you see the baby, you hold the baby and you know that it's okay and mom's doing okay, there is an exhilaration. There is a joy that I've not felt any other time in my life except the 3 times when I experienced that holding my own kids, that is unmatched. And you see, that's what awe is. It's this exhilaration and beauty and terror and dread all mixed into one. And so it's really no wonder that Christmas and the Christmas story is so polarizing, because it is the most awe-inspiring thing that has ever happened in human history. That God, the unseen, invisible God, comes down and he's born. It blows my mind when I think about that moment with me holding each of my kids. It blows my mind that Mary and Joseph and Jesus, the Savior of the world, they experienced that same kind of moment. And so it's no wonder that this Christmas story is so polarizing, because it's so awe-inspiring. And awe has a tendency to do it. It tends to drive us one way or the other because we can't handle the bigness of it. Case in point, most of the time on Christmas, like 99% of your Christmases are going to be spent hearing the gospel account from Luke chapter 2. We heard it at the beginning of the service, or toward the beginning of the service tonight. That's the story that we all know. Mary and Joseph, there's a census, they got to go to Bethlehem, they travel there. While they're there, it's time for her to give birth, but there's no room, so they're in the manger, swaddling cloths and animals and shepherds in the field and angel choirs singing to the shepherds. Like, that's the story that we know. But there is another gospel account that talks about the actual events of Christmas. Matthew talks about the historical events around Christmas, except Matthew's account looks nothing like Luke's account. And it's not contradictory. Matthew's account of Christmas, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, it's just so concise that you almost miss it when you're reading Matthew's gospel. I'll show you what I mean. Matthew chapter 1, it says, "But Joseph did not consummate their marriage until she, Mary, gave birth to a son, and he gave him the name Jesus. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, 'Where is the one who was born King of the Jews? We saw a star when it rose, and we've come to worship him.'" Do you notice? Like, Christmas happens in a page turn from chapter 1 to chapter 2. Before Joseph did this, after then the Magi come, and the Magi came months, if not up to 2 years after Jesus was born. There's almost no record of the events of Christmas Eve. Why is that? Why is that? Well, I think it's because while Luke wants us to understand all the events around Christmas, Matthew is more concerned in people's reaction to Christmas, their response to Christmas. And so you've got these 2 sets of characters. You've got the Magi, the wise men from the east. You've got Herod, who is the reigning king of the Jews, the puppet king placed by the Roman Caesar over the people. And you've got people who are just so polarized in their reactions. We've already talked about Herod, right? I talked about him a minute ago. I want to talk briefly about the Magi. The Magi, we don't know that much about the Magi, who they were. They could have been astrologers who were just really gifted at studying the stars and they knew something happened. They could be prophets or seers. Maybe they were people who were familiar with world scriptures and Hebrew scriptures and they knew something was to happen, that there was a Messiah to be born. Or maybe they're just delegates from foreign kings trying to maintain good diplomatic relations. We don't really know that much about the Magi other than they saw a star and they came. And notice what Matthew's saying. Matthew's saying that while Herod rages and resists and orders the death of children, all based on the implications of Jesus' birth, the Magi do the opposite. They see the star, they know something has happened, or that a king has been born. And what do? They leave everything behind at home. They make a long and arduous journey to check it out, to discover it, to investigate. Curious and open-hearted, they go to try to find out more about who this king is. And then once they find him, You know the story. What do? They bow down before him, they worship him, and they offer these extravagant gifts. Tonight, here's what I want you to do. I want you to think not about just the events of Christmas, but I really want you to pay attention and to think about your reaction to it, your response. Because Matthew says there are really only two options when you're facing something so awe-inspiring as the birth of God in human flesh, the King of everything coming down for us. Matthew doesn't give us any choices. He says there are two options. Will you let it be awesome? And will you fall down and worship like the Magi did? Will you at least keep your heart open and maintain a sense of curiosity and investigate it? Or will you see it as awful? Will you fight against the reality of Christmas, the message of Christmas, all the days of your life like Herod? And yet I can already predict what some of us are thinking. We're thinking like, well, isn't there kind of a third way, a more neutral way where I don't have to be a hater like Herod, but I don't have to be a zealot like the Magi? Can't I just come and pay my respects and acknowledge Jesus and yet leave my life relatively unaffected by the birth of this king? And I want you to understand that's not how it works. There is no middle way. There is no fence to sit on. And I don't blame you for wanting to do that, but it just doesn't exist. Christmas is polarizing. Awe is polarizing. And Matthew says it's one or the other. You're Herod or you're the Magi. In fact, later on in Jesus' ministry, he says the same. This is in Matthew's gospel. He says, whoever is not with me is against me. And whoever does not gather with me, who's not doing my work with me, they're actually scattering. They're working against me. Jesus says, I'm polarizing. You can't be in the middle. You're with me or you're against me. You're gathering with me or you're scattering. You're working against me. So which way will it be for you? What will your response be? Do you see it as awful, like Herod? Something to fight against? Or is it awesome, something that you want to explore, something you want to open up your heart and your life to, like the Magi? I have a clear bias here. And tonight I just want to plead with you to be like the Magi. I want to beg you to pursue Jesus, to search him out. And when you do, in curiosity, here's what you'll discover, that your whole life he's actually been pursuing you. That right now he stands at the door of your heart and he knocks and he's ready to come into your life. When you just become aware of his presence, you realize that he's been there with you every step of your journey. And when you find him, I want to encourage you to be like the Magi. And to bow down before him, to worship him, to reverence him, to acknowledge him as the king of everything, which means submit your agenda for your life to him. And then like the Magi, offer the most extravagant gift you can offer, the gift of yourself. Pour out your life in front of him. Be like the Magi. Now, I know what you're thinking if this is new to you. That sounds scary. That sounds awful. That sounds threatening. And you're not wrong. Because if you let Jesus in like that, if you act like the Magi, Jesus will upend your life. He will redirect your plans. He will alter your paths. It'll happen. I stand here today as one who can tell you that my life right now is not anything like what I planned it to be for my first 20 years of living. But the person of Jesus and my best attempt to submit to him and to offer my life to him has directed my life differently. He's altered my paths. He's upended my plans. And sometimes I get mad about that, and sometimes I wonder what life would be. But here's what I know. At my age, as I watch things play out, these two tracks that we can take, I know that my life is unquestionably better for yielding, surrendering, and offering my life to him. And here's why, because when Jesus comes into your life and he upends it, it's not like a tornado ripping through a town, leaving everything destroyed. It's more like a really good home renovation crew who also tears up everything And in the middle of it, you're thinking, what did we do? Is everything gonna be okay again? But then in the end, after everything's cleaned up and you're like, this is so much better. I'm so glad we did that. See, that's my testimony. My life looks nothing like what I planned, but it's so much better than anything I could have dreamed for myself. And so this fear that we hold on to, this dread of the awesome demands of Jesus, there's nothing to fear, because as you worship him, as you surrender to him, as he upends your life, as you pour yourself out as an offering to him, he will only fill you up with a richer kind of life than anything you've known before. So tonight I'm asking you to stop pretending that you can be neutral. You can't be neutral about anything this significant, this awe-inspiring. It's either Herod or it's the Magi. And I'm begging you to at least start your journey to be like the Magi. Will you pray with me? God in heaven, I pray that you'd speak to our fear tonight. The idea of our lives being upended, the idea of losing control, the idea of a new order, a new way, it is so terrifying to all of us. And yet, Lord, speak to our fear and remind us of your great love. Lord, tell us right now if we don't believe it. Tell us how good you are. Just make our hearts believe it and feel it. Help our minds be convinced of your goodness and your love for us, the goodness that sent your son down for us so that we're no longer afraid. And that we, like the Magi, willingly bow down. We worship, we pour ourselves out, we offer ourselves to you, counting on you to direct our paths in better ways, counting on you to fill us up with a richer life than anything we could know. God, speak to our fear. And Lord, I'm praying that for all of us. I'm praying that tonight you would ignite in us a curiosity and an openness to be like the Magi, whether this is the first time we're hearing this or whether this is just the time we're hearing this again, so that the revolutionary, disruptive work of Jesus would disrupt and then reorder our lives in all the best ways. But God, you got to speak to our fear first. So reassure us of your goodness and then have your way. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Merry Christmas, and thank you for joining us and being a part of our online Pathfinder community this Christmas Eve. If you're new, you can find helpful links to resources in the description below or at our website, pathfinderstl.org. While you're there, you can also find our message podcasts, which allow you to listen to the weekend message on the go. So whatever you're doing and wherever you are, you'll never miss out on a message from us. This Christmas, celebrate with others by sharing this experience. You never know who could benefit from today's worship experience or the message. Also, hit that subscribe button, like, and comment. Every interaction helps the message of Jesus spread. Finally, if you'd like to support our ministry with a gift this Christmas, you can do so at pathfinderstl.org/giving. It's your generosity that fuels what we do here at Pathfinder Church. Thank you so much again for joining us. Have a blessed Christmas, and I hope to see you here next time.